gentlemen, I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X researcher and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled, "The Sun Disappears, Day Turns into Night." Now on July 20th, 2018, day turned into night in the Yakutia northern region of Russia. This region is above the Arctic Circle and at this time of the year is supposed to have daylight for nearly 24 hours a day. However, from about 11 a.m. it started getting dark, and by 11:30 it had become completely dark. The darkness lasted until 2 p.m. Locals talked about the possibility that an eclipse had occurred, but it only affected 2 districts in the Yakutia region, and an eclipse should have affected a much wider area. The other possibility was that a thick cloud of dust came over the region, but officials said that there was no cloud of dust and that fires burning in other regions had not affected the area, and also that any pollution resulting from those fires had not reached the area. However, locals reported seeing thick layers of dust on the ground after the event. And this is what you can see. This is the darkness that was photographed. As you can see, it does not seem to be any cloud. In fact, the sky is not completely dark like it used to be years ago. Nowadays, we don't seem to be getting really dark nights like we used to many years ago. The sky is often this color at night, and this is what we see here, but we can see it's extremely dark, and obviously cars had to switch on their headlights. There was this strange color in the sky. It looks reddish, and locals reported that the darkness had a rich yellow undertone to it. So this is probably what we're seeing here. Now, people also reported feeling a heaviness in their chest from being outside, which made them want to go inside. So this suggests that there was something in the air which was most likely toxic to humans, perhaps to human lungs. And the fact that locals reported seeing dust on the ground suggests that the dust that may have been in the air at the time was affecting people's lungs. But people did not actually report seeing or feeling dust fall on them, so it must have been very fine dust, and any cloud must have been quite diffuse. This does not seem to be a normal cloud of pollution or dust or smoke, as no one reported seeing a cloud approaching, and it just became darker. A cloud of dust or smoke coming toward a certain region can usually be seen approaching, since these move horizontally and thus parallel to the ground. But no one reported seeing any cloud of dust or smoke approaching, which suggests that it came from above and therefore most likely from space. This was most likely a cloud of dust that entered the atmosphere above this region of Russia. And here we see these are the 2 regions. They call districts, 2 districts in this region, which is called the Yakutia region. And it is above the Arctic Circle. Now, the rich yellow undertone of the darkness that people reported on must have been what caused the sky to look red in those photographs, and suggests that whatever was in the atmosphere was reacting and emitting light. A cloud of normal pollution would be expected to make the sky darker and gray, not yellow or red. So the dust was reacting and giving off light, suggesting that energy was being transferred, causing electrons to move to different energy levels. Dust that comes from above and thus most likely from outside the atmosphere, and also reacts with atmospheric particles so that radiation is emitted, is suggestive of stellar core dust coming into the Earth's atmosphere. Stellar core matter absorbs energy, which causes condensation, ionization, and light emission. Stellar core dust has been coming into our atmosphere for quite a long time, and has thus been producing luminescent clouds and strange colors in the sky. And you may look at article 275 entitled Planet X Debris Field Impacting Earth for more details on that. However, this dust usually remains suspended in the atmosphere for a long time, as it is usually very low in gravitational energy and does not therefore fall to Earth, like normal Earth matter, until it has absorbed some gravitational energy from interacting with Earth matter. And this may then be why it took 3 hours for the dust to reach the ground. But as mentioned before, if the dust had caused the darkness due to its density, so that light from the sun was not able to penetrate it, people should have reported seeing and feeling the dust around them and falling on them. But none of the reports seem to suggest that people were immersed in a thick cloud of dust, which suggests that there was not enough dust to justify the darkness that ensued. So what could have obscured the sun so that day turned into darkness? What most likely happened then is that the local sun simulation was interrupted by the incoming dust. In other words, the sun simulator malfunctioned as a result of the incoming stellar core dust, most likely because the dust absorbs energy and thus draws a current of electrons from the environment. The main simulator in operation is the one in orbit. This device seems to transmit power and sometimes project a laser beam onto clouds, thus producing a holographic projection of the sun in the clouds. And the fact that we have a sun simulator in orbit can be seen from this image, where we have a light source, which at first may seem to be the sun, but the reflection it is producing and is being detected from the satellite. So and this reflection is basically light reflecting off the Earth itself. The Earth is acting like a mirror here. But this reflection is 21 times larger than you would expect the real sun's reflection to be. And this means that this light source here cannot be the sun. It is the sun simulator. And obviously it's above the surface, above the atmosphere, and therefore in orbit. And you may look at article 224 entitled Sun Simulator in Orbit, Irrefutable Evidence for more details. And here we see the sun is both behind and in front of clouds, because we see clouds behind the sun and clouds in front of the sun. So this cannot be the real sun. It's actually a holographic projection of the sun. And the fact that it's a holographic projection can be seen from this sequence of images, where we see an aircraft approaching the sun and actually gets larger as it approaches, and that indicates the presence of a lensing system between this sun simulator and the observer on the surface. It gets larger and it actually goes into the sun, and then a few seconds later it starts emerging from further to the left, and you can see it starting to emerge. So it looks like an aircraft actually went through the sun, and this is only possible if this is actually a projection, a three-dimensional projection onto clouds, and therefore a holographic projection in the clouds. Now, if dust, and you may look at article 233 entitled The Holographic Sun in the Clouds for more details on this. Now, if dust falls through the atmosphere and interrupts the projection or signal from the simulator in orbit to the clouds below, it is to be expected that this kind of holographic projection in the clouds would be interrupted, resulting in the holographic sun going out. However, the amount of dust that seems to have come in does not seem to be significant enough to cause day to turn into light, and thus the darkness that ensued must have occurred only because the sun simulator illuminating these two regions failed. Thus, the extreme darkness produced by this incoming dust suggests that the real sun is now extremely dim, or it was not emitting any light at all. which is even more likely at the time, and therefore the only illumination the atmosphere was getting was from the simulator, in which case it would be likely that only the lower portion of the atmosphere would have been illuminated, as the simulator would be at cloud altitude and the atmosphere extends very far above that. But in order for the sky to look blue from the ground, only the lower part of the atmosphere would need to be illuminated. Now, the fact that the sun goes completely dark at times became obvious to me when I first noticed that the so-called STO eclipse season was actually the sun going dark. The fact that the corona shrinks back as darkness progresses across the sun indicates that it is not an eclipse that is affecting the sun, but the sun is actually going dark. And here you see 3 images showing the sun going progressively darker, and this is in the second eclipse season of 2017. So this is from the first day, August 16th, 2017, and the images are about 4 minutes apart, and you can see the sun is getting progressively darker here. And what you also see is that the corona shrinks back as the darkness progresses, and you can see it shrinks back if you compare the size of the corona here at about the same position of what it looks like there. And this would indicate, because the corona would be along here as well, is that the corona decreases in size in the region that is about to go dark next. And this means that the sun's light emission is decreasing, and in the next moment this region will go dark, and then the corona would decrease in size further up. And we can see clearly that the corona shrinking back cannot be due to an eclipse, because if it was an eclipse, the Earth would be here below the blue line. The Earth would be much larger than the sun from the satellite's perspective, so it would be almost flat, but definitely cannot curve this way. So it would have to be below the blue line. So there's no way the Earth would be able to cover this part of the corona, which is clearly missing here on both sides. If the Earth was simply covering this part of the sun, there's no reason for this part of the corona to be missing there. It should still be there, and the Earth here covering the sun below, but this is not occurring. This part of the corona is missing, and there's no way the Earth could have covered that part of the corona. So this is not an eclipse. And the other thing that we see is that we see complete structures, perfectly edged little cellular-like structures of the sun, all seen at the edge. It's as if they either are on or off. Like this one is on now, but as darkness progresses in the next few seconds or minutes, this part of the sun will go dark. But you never see parts of the sun that are partially covered. If this was partially covered, we'd probably see a section of these cellular-like structures partially covered, not perfectly edged, just partially covered by the Earth. We never see that. We see them always perfectly edged, as if complete structures are either on or off. Again, suggesting and actually indicating, because this cannot be due to an eclipse. This is the sun going dark. Therefore, the sun goes dark. And this has been occurring since 2011, and the sun goes dark for up to about an hour a day. So we know that by 2011, the sun was already going dark for up to an hour a day during at least the eclipse season. But it was likely to be happening at other times as well. We just wouldn't be able to see it. It would be covered up at the simulators. And obviously, the STO images would be manipulated at other times, so we wouldn't see it. Now, but in this case, in Russia, this would mean that the sun must have remained dark for at least 3 hours. Now, since the stellar cores will continue to draw energy from the sun and thus continue to weaken it, the sun will most likely stay dark for longer and longer periods of time, until it will eventually remain dark most of the time and ultimately go out completely and for good. And at the moment, it's also likely that when the sun does emit light, that this light is very dim. You may look at article 195 entitled Stellar Course and the Dying Sun. The fact that this event occurs suggests that greater quantities of dust have started coming into the Earth's atmosphere than has happened before. And it is therefore likely that the amounts of dust coming in will thus increase and may also become more frequent, in which case failure of the sun simulator system will occur more often, and more of the Earth's population will see day suddenly turn into night. In conclusion, an event in which day turned into night in the northern part of Russia seems to be due to stellar core dust entering the atmosphere, which then led to sun simulation failure. The incident also shows that the sun is either extremely dim or going completely dark for extended periods of time. Stellar core dust entering the atmosphere is likely to keep increasing, which will most likely lead to this type of event repeating itself with increasing frequency. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.